Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, an Eagles-Rams preview. This is the game of the week across the National Football League in Week 3. The Rams 2-0, traveling to Philadelphia. The Birds 2-0. Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern is when kickoff is going to take place. Philadelphia right now, early in the week, 3.5-point favorites with the over-under set at 44.5. My name is Chase Sr. So glad all of you are hanging out here with me. And I do want to begin with this before we really dive into this game. Injury news, matchups to watch, keys to the game as well. Let's hear from you down in the comment section. Get those predictions in. Who you got? Type LAR for the Rams, PHI for the Philadelphia Eagles. And with that, let's get this preview underway here on the show. We're off and running. Here we go. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Sr. here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. It has been a very difficult schedule for the Eagles so far, coming off that Super Bowl, Week 1 against Dallas, Week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't get any easier, and really, it's a gauntlet of a schedule here in 2025, and that continues with another great matchup between the Birds and the Rams in a rematch of the divisional round from the 2024 NFL playoffs, a game that came down to the wire. It started off pristine weather conditions. Obviously, it ended with a little bit of a blizzard in South Philadelphia, and the Rams gave the Eagles really the only test that Philadelphia got throughout that playoff run en route to the Super Bowl, so I can't wait for this one, and I know all of you are with me. A programming reminder, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily and year-round coverage of the Eagles, but also subscribe, turn on your notifications, and join us. We're live for every single Eagles game, and we're running it back once again here in Week 3. Eagles-Rams watch party right here on the show, and a big shout-out to all of the real ones here because yesterday we surpassed 128,000 subscribers. Eagles-Rams, two high-level organizations. They both have great owners. They both have great general managers, two elite coaches, two great rosters, two true contenders here in 2025, and obviously that was the case in 2024, and they have had some really good matchups over the years, in particular last year with a couple of notable games against one another at SoFi Stadium in the regular season Week 12, and then in the divisional round, as I mentioned, and this has become a sneaky good battle in the NFC. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's a rivalry because it's not really to that level, but this is a game that both the Eagles and the Rams have circled in addition to their respective fan bases. And for the Rams, they simply haven't been able to beat Philadelphia. Over their last 11 games, since they really started to kick it into gear at the midway point of last year, the Rams are 9-0 against all other teams across the league. But they are 0-2 against the Eagles. Last year, Philadelphia with a clean sweep of Sean McVay's club, and the first win was back in Week 12. Let's take a look back at that matchup. Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football won 37-20 at SoFi Stadium. Eagles fans took over the joint because that's what Eagles fans do, and there's a lot of Birds fans tuned into the show from LA and living in LA, and so it was an Eagles-heavy crowd, and you could tell with how loud it was inside that pristine stadium. Saquon Barkley in primetime popped off. He had one of the best individual performances that you will ever see over the course of NFL history. 255 yards rushing against Los Angeles, including 2 touchdowns. Both of those scores, 70-plus yards. So the explosive plays haven't been a constant for Philadelphia to start the year. They were last year, especially on the ground with Saquon. Philadelphia also put up 481 yards of offense to the Rams' 290, and the Eagles really got after Matthew Stafford. They sacked him 5 times, and Brandon Graham had a hell of a game before he ended up tearing his triceps. And that Saquon performance, historic against the Rams. I mean, it was incredible to really watch it in real time with what he was able to do, how he looked, and the dominance on display. He averaged in that game a ridiculous 9.8 yards per carry. He set a franchise record yard for rushing yards in a game, taking down LaShawn McCoy's previous mark. He became the 12th player ever to have 300-plus all-purpose yards in a game. And he was the first player since Maurice Jones-Drew of the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2009 to have 2 rushing touchdowns of 70-plus yards. That was in Week 12. We had a rematch in the divisional round. Eagles won that game 28-22. Saquon Barkley went off again. Another insane performance. 26 totes of the pill for 205 yards. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry. He had touchdowns from 78 and 62 yards. So last year in 2024, to summarize that, Saquon had 4 rushing touchdowns against the Rams. All of them were 60-plus yards. This was a huge part of the ball game as well. Philadelphia won the turnover battle 2-0, and those turnovers during that game were huge, and Jalen Carter helped to close the game by putting Matthew Stafford under duress as the snow was falling. And late, with the few minutes left, it looked as though the Eagles were going to run away with this game. But then the Rams scored quickly. Then they drove down the field again before Jalen Carter's heroics really saved the Eagles' season. And can you imagine if the Eagles suffered a defeat in that game at the Link with how well they played, spoiling the performance of Saquon? It would have been a heartbreaking loss. But instead, the Eagles punched their ticket to the NFC Championship game. They dropped 55 points on the Commanders' heads, and then they dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. This play, of course, from Saquon, the long scamper as the snow was falling. I said it during the watch party during the playoffs last year. Saquon in the snow. Shades of Shady McCoy. It's one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. And NFL Films putting that classic soundtrack behind the play in slow motion doesn't get better than that. And Jalen Carter really displayed his dominance at the end of that game. He had the pressure on Matthew Stafford, the sack of Matthew Stafford, and I don't think the Eagles close out that game without Carter, who just was looking like an all-pro out there, one of the top defensive players in the game. Vic Fangio did say today, by the way, he's not in 100% game shape. Hopefully 98 gets there soon. Dealt with some injuries and obviously the suspension messing with him as well. So you think back to Week 12, you think back to the divisional round, right? That was in 2024. Obviously, we flipped the page to the 2025 campaign, and here we are, Tuesday, September 16th, as I watch this show going into Week 3. These are 2 different teams, of course, but both of these teams feature a lot of the same core pieces. Roster-wise, pivotal figures in the organization, head coaches, offensive and defensive minds. But really, when you canvass these 2 rosters, both of these teams still have a lot of the star players that we saw in those 2 games last year. And the Rams so far this year, living up to the billing. I looked at them. If Matthew Stafford could stay healthy as a Super Bowl contender and a threat to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think they are every bit of that. In Week 1, a 14-9 ugly win at home against the Houston Texans, in which the defense played awesome. They dazzled. And then Week 2, a couple of days ago, the Rams go on the road to Nashville. Game was close for a little bit. I know a lot of people like Tennessee +5 on the betting line. I did not. They're too young and too inexperienced on offense to really keep up with the Rams team throughout the course of 60 minutes. And so Los Angeles ended up pulling away and covering with the final score of 33-19. So far through 2 games, I know it's early, but the Rams last year, they really started to find their groove defensively at about the midway point of the year with that young defense. To start this year, they're the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. So the Eagles offense will have their work cut out for them. And as we know, the Eagles offense has struggled to start the 2025 season. And on defense, they are just loaded with a lot of young talent, led by Jared Verse, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. And this offseason, they made 2 really big moves. They got rid of Cooper Kupp, who went to his home state of Washington and signed with the Seattle Seahawks, and the Rams added wide receiver Devontae Adams to put him alongside Puka Nacua. With Matthew Stafford throwing the rock, they've improved and prioritized their offensive line in recent years, and they gave Kyren Williams a contract extension. He's a really solid back. Here's how the Rams stack up to start the year. On offense, they're averaging 23.5 points per game. That's 11th among the 32 teams in the NFL. They're 7th in yardage at 367.5. Number 3 in yards per play at 6.3. Third down percentage offensively, they're converting 48% of the time. That's number 4 in the red zone. Struggling a little bit through 2 games, 55.5%, that's 21st. On defense, as I mentioned, number 1 scoring defense in the league at 14 points a game allowed. They're also giving up 258.5 yards per game defensively. That's number 4. 4.3 yards per play, that ranks number 3. Their third down percentage, number 7, so 7th best at 33.3%. And through 2 contests, when teams get into the red area, they can't finish. And they've struggled to even get to the red zone. They've only scored a touchdown on those red zone trips 25% of the time. That ranks number 2 in the league. And so the Rams, up until this point, have played very well. And a point of emphasis for Los Angeles, starting faster this year, because the last 2 years they haven't. They've played catch up, and they've really had to rally late in the year just to make the playoffs. But while this Rams team has played well, they have not played a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. But I will say for the Birds, this is a spot, this is an opponent, and this is a matchup where Philadelphia needs to play their best football. If they don't, they will lose. They'll get knocked off. And then in week 4, another difficult game against a playoff team, they go on the road to play the Buccaneers, who are 2-0, most likely 3-0 by the time that week 4 matchup comes along. And so this is a big one for the Birds. Here's how the Eagles stack up on both sides of the rock. Under Kevin Patullo, offensive coordinator, and Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator. Offensively, 22 points per game. Average, middle of the pack in the NFL. That ranks 16th. 259 yards per game. 29th among the 32 teams. Yards per play. This has to do with the lack of explosives, right? 4.3. 30th in the NFL. They are really good on third downs. Number 3 in the league at 48.1%. And they are number 1 in red zone touchdown efficiency, 100%. Every time they've gotten inside the red area, they've been able to capitalize those drives with 6 and 7 points. Defensively, the Eagles, they've only given up 7 points in the second half of the first 2 games so far. And so defensively, points per game wise, 18.5, that ranks 12th. They're 9th in yards per game at 300. Yards per play, 18th at 5.3. They have to get better getting off the field on third downs, and that's especially going to be a huge key to this game. They rank 25th there, so the opposition converting on third downs nearly 48% of the time, and they have to get better in the red zone with stops there too. Obviously, the Andrew Makuba pick off the hands of Travis Kelce and off of Patrick Mahomes was a huge play, and it helped to win the game for Philadelphia, but room to grow there because they're giving up touchdowns 60% of the time. That's 17th in the NFL. We shift gears to some injury news for both clubs. Dallas Goedert, Eagles star tight end, did not play against Kansas City because of a knee sprain. The Eagles certainly missed him. We'll monitor his status throughout the week. Quarterback Tanner McKee is progressing with that thumb injury. He was the emergency quarterback in week 2, whereas he was not active in week 1. Running back Will Shipley still dealing with that oblique. The Eagles have not put him on IR. They're just going to see how that goes. It's an oblique and rib injury. We saw Devontae Smith come down hard on his back, but he did finish the game. But obviously that's noteworthy because he's one of the top wide receivers in the game. And how about the play of Jordan Davis so far? I mean, he's having a career year. Now that he's in better shape, he's become a key cog of this Eagles defense. He's becoming a 3-down player, good against the pass, collapsing the pocket, batting passes down, really good against the run. He was cramping in that game against Kansas City and kind of grabbing at his hamstring. Rams injury news. This is significant for the Eagles, especially on both sides of the ball with how they can attack Los Angeles on Sunday. Cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon, broken clavicle. He's on IR. Not going to play in this game. Center Steve Avila, he's been banged up. We'll see if he can go, dealing with an ankle. Tight end Colby Parkinson did not play against Tennessee because of that shoulder. Braden Fisk injured his oblique, but did battle through it against the Titans. And then guard Kevin Dotson dealing with an ankle injury. And so some important players on the Eagles injury report and the Rams injury report. Again, recording this show on Tuesday, September 16th. We'll monitor all of those injuries throughout the week, and we'll see what happens when Sunday comes around. Coming up next here on the show, isn't this the best Eagles-Rams preview that you're finding here on YouTube? I'm so glad all of you are kicking it here with me. But don't go anywhere, because coming up around the corner, my keys to the game for an Eagles victory and how they can beat the Rams and stay undefeated, pushing that record to 3-0. Our sponsor for today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, brought to you by Prize Picks. Look, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. This is the best daily fantasy sports app that you'll find. So download the app, create an account, use the code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS, and you can win up to 2,000 times your money. And right now, when you play your first $5 lineup, you get $50 back. It's very simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. This is the best way to win cash this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. The best place to win cash while watching sports. Join the millions of users and sign up today. Make the good decision. And let's take a look at our card here for week 3. A.J. Brown at some point has to go off, right? Too good of a player. So let's go with more than 72.5 receiving yards, especially with that Rams secondary banged up. Puka Nacua. I think the Rams are going to target Adoree Jackson more than 84.5 receiving yards. And then the special here this week, Giants-Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes more than a half passing yard. New users play $5, get $50 instantly in lineups. It's real money sports action made easy. Claim your $50 now. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, to the back half of the show, let's do a little bit of a reset here before we get to some awesome intel and analysis. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Senior. Coming up here on the show, my week 3 keys to the game. What the Eagles need to do to beat the Rams at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday in the game of the week across the entire league, and some of the matchups and storylines that we have to monitor. Key to the game number 1. This has been a huge problem for the Eagles in the first 2 games of the year. I think a lot of people are overly panicking right now, and they don't remember that last year to start the year, the Eagles were very mid offensively and defensively. They even had their struggles. But on the offensive side of the football, they really didn't find their groove until week 7 or week 8. But to start 2025, an issue, generating explosive plays. These are plays of 10-plus yards, and the Eagles haven't been able to manufacture a lot of them, which is somewhat puzzling with all of the talent on the offensive side of the ball. Howie Roseman has built this team in a way where they are so deep, they have so much premier talent, so much depth, and under Nick Sirianni, early in the year, they usually take their time in trying to find their identity. I think that's what you're seeing right now, but obviously a lot of Eagles fans with Kevin Patullo, internal promotion to offensive coordinator, taking over for Kellen Moore, have Brian Johnson PTSD from 2023. Offense struggled then. He was an internal promotion, taking over for Shane Steichen. And so going into this game, and really all year long, all eyes are on Kevin Patullo, and the pressure is on. Now, you got to give him some slack, right? He is 8 quarters into his NFL career calling plays. He's never called plays previously to the 2025 season. And so you got to give him some breathing room here, but there have been issues on the offensive side of the football. Lack of explosive plays. The pass game has really been lacking, and that's obviously backed up by the lack of throwing production for Jalen Hurts, even though analytically he's been very efficient and awesome on third downs. The offense for the Eagles has been very vanilla, and as part of that, the play calls have been predictable. These are play calls that are predictable, but also the defense is able to read and predict what the Eagles are going to do because the play designs and the scheme has become somewhat predictable. Again, another 2023 problem. But this time last year, it was also an issue. And speaking to the Eagles' lack of explosive plays here, they only have 3 pass plays in 2 games of 10-plus yards. Against Kansas City, Hurts only completed 1 of 4 passes that traveled 10-plus yards against the Chiefs. And so he's really not throwing the ball downfield either. And for context in 2022, this is part of the reason why the standard is so high from fans with this Eagles team. Philadelphia led the NFL with 169 explosives. They averaged 9.9 explosive plays per game. And last year with Saquon Barkley, they also generated a lot of explosive plays. And to a certain degree, he's been a little bit bottled up. And so you take a look at these Eagles offensive numbers here. They are very, very average. But in a couple of key areas, third down and in the red zone, they have flourished. They have the third best third down percentage in the NFL at 48.1%. And when they get inside the 20, every time they've gotten inside the red zone so far this year, they have scored a touchdown. 100% red zone conversion rate. That's huge. And then obviously when they don't get inside the red zone, Jake Elliott has been money to start the season. But with all of the aforementioned talent on this Eagles ball club, you got to be better than 16th in points per game at 22 per. Better than 29th in the NFL in yards per game at 259. And then yards per play, 4.3. Defensively, Eagles really been able to carry the load for this Eagles team to a certain degree, especially with how they've played in the second half, giving up just 7 points after recess in the first 2 games of the year. Another problem with this Eagles passing game is the average depth of target for Jalen Hurts thus far. And this obviously has to do with the lack of explosive plays, but it's also part of a bigger and greater problem, right? Hurts and Kevin Patullo really just aren't throwing the ball downfield. And Jalen Hurts has an average depth of target so far of only 6 yards. And through his first 2 games, that's the lowest of his career in that span as a full-time starter. In 2021, 7.9. In 2022, 6.9. In 2023, 9.6. In 2024, 6.8. And this year, by far a low at 6 even. And this has been a reoccurring theme for the Eagles to start the year. And obviously, it's a problematic takeaway and trend where Hurts has plenty of protection, but this Eagles offense right now is very easy to defend. I mean, everybody here downfield is covered. There is nothing there for Jalen Hurts. And so working off of point number 1 there for my keys to the game, we segue to key to the game number 2. The Eagles have to get A.J. Brown going. And I think that he's been a champion so far. He's not complaining. We don't see sideline spats. Obviously, with wide receivers, they can be very demonstrative and get frustrated easily with a lack of targets and production. A.J. has said, look, first 2 games of the year, I haven't put up big numbers, but we've won. And it's all about making sacrifices throughout the course of an NFL season. But A.J. Brown is a top 3 wideout in the game. He is so special with his size, speed, hands, route running, being able to pick up yards after the catch, the explosive nature that he brings this Eagles offense downfield. At 6'1", 226, he's such a unique playmaker, a modern-day Julio Jones or Terrell Owens in that body type. But through 2 games, 6 catches, 35 yards, first game of the year, 1 target. It came late in the game for only 8 yards. It is so important to get A.J. Brown going because good things happen when A.J. Brown gets the ball and when the Eagles throw it his way. And the issue with A.J. so far, it's not him. I think he's healthy. I don't think he's hurting with that hamstring, which kept him out 3 weeks during training camp. His routes are way too predictable, and it's always the same thing. He goes in motion, and he's at the same part of the field, and he's running that slant. He's running an out route, and for DBs and defenses, they know what's coming. And the average depth of A.J. Brown's targets through 2 games is 7.4 yards. So a lot of his routes are short, especially the in-breakers. And the average depth in his previous 6 seasons, 11.9. And so A.J. Brown is averaging 0.8 yards after the catch on his 6 catches this year. He averages 5.6 yards after the catch in his entire career. And what's confounding about this also is that the connection of Hurts to A.J. has been so dominant since the Eagles traded for him in 2022. It's been one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in the NFL, and that's a reason why A.J. Brown has been an All-Pro every year that he's been in an Eagles uniform. But also, Jalen Hurts throws the deep ball so well. He has one of the best deep balls in the NFL. But Hurts has only attempted 3 passes of 20-plus yards to start the year, good for 6.2 air yards per attempt, which is 31st in the NFL. And this is a Rams secondary that is shorthanded. Ahkello Witherspoon, cornerback, got placed on injured reserve due to a broken clavicle. And so if the Eagles' offensive line protection can hold up, if they can get that ground game going, I want to see the Eagles take some shots downfield. In week 2 against Kansas City, some of the protections broke down because Grant Calcaterra can't really block. And the Eagles had an opportunity, first play of the game, to take a shot downfield to AJ, which could have gone for a 70-yard touchdown. Obviously, so many nuances any given play. But the point here is, in week 2 against the Rams, the Eagles have to get A.J. Brown going because when he is clicking, this Eagles offense is unstoppable. Key to the game number 3. I'm telling you this right now. The Rams have Saquon Barkley PTSD, and the Rams are going to center in on Saquon. They do not want to let Barkley beat them like he did in both matchups in 2024 when he ran crazy. Back to week 12. Eagles won that game. Sunday Night Football, 37-20 at SoFi Stadium. Saquon, 255 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Both of those scores, speaking of explosive plays, went for 70-plus yards. He averaged in week 12 9.8 yards per carry. He also set a franchise record for the most rushing yards in a single game. He became the 12th player ever to have 300-plus yards in a game. And he was the first player since Maurice Jones-Drew in 2009 to have 2 touchdowns of 70-plus yards. Was that it? No. Did I mention that the Rams know what Saquon Barkley can do against them? In the divisional round, Eagles won 28-22. Saquon, star-studded performance again. 26 totes, 205, 6.4 yards per carry, and his 2 touchdowns from 78 and 62 yards. The Rams, they do not want to let Saquon Barkley burn them again. And this Rams defense, by season's end, going to be one of the best defensive units in the NFL. The latter half of 2024, they started to become that. This is a Rams defense that I think is only getting started because of all of the great talent on that side of the ball, led by Jared Verse. Through 2 games so far this year, they're only surrendering 14 points per game. Number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. They're 4th in yards allowed per game, 3rd in yards per play, good on 3rd down, and the 2nd best red zone defense in the league too. Key to the game number 4. I'm telling you right now as well, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay have watched the tape for the Eagles in week 1 against Dallas when CeeDee Lamb popped off, and week 2 against Kansas City when, once again, the Eagles had more secondary and coverage breakdowns. And in those 2 games, through those 8 quarters, Matthew Stafford, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, Sean McVay, probably the 2nd best coach in the NFL behind Andy Reid, they have noticed that Adoree Jackson is the weak spot in this Eagles secondary, and they will attack him. Whether it be with Puka Nacua, whether it be with Davante Adams, they're going to look at number 8, and they're going to throw the ball his way. Stafford so far, this back could flare up at any point, but in the first 2 games, he has stayed healthy. He's completed 71% of his passes, 543 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And he has one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL to throw to. Puka Nacua putting up good production once again, 18 catches in 2 games for 221 yards. And so that's 9 catches per game and more than 100 yards per game on average. Hasn't found the end zone yet, along of 25. Davante Adams, elder statesman, but a future Hall of Famer, really good route runner, so clean getting in and out of his breaks, and gives the Rams really good size at the wide receiver spot too. He can burn you in so many ways with his route tree, and the timing throws from Stafford to Nacua and Adams, very difficult to stop, especially with those back shoulders, and sometimes you'll see Stafford with the no-look toss. For Adams so far, 10 catches, $157, 1 touchdown, and a long of 33. And Adoree Jackson, how has he fared in 2025? One of the worst corners to start the year. Pro Football Focus overall grade, 41.2. 127th among 140 corners. His coverage grade, 40.6. That ranks 121st. His passer rating allowed, 102.4. He's also giving up 16.1 yards per catch. And so, on average, a lot of plays downfield where Adoree has been a liability in coverage. To his credit, has 2 pass breakups. That does rank 6th among all corners, and that comes on 59 coverage snaps. He's also been banged up, having to leave the game in each of the first 2 games. Key to the game number 5. The turnover battle in this game is going to be huge. These are 2 contenders in the NFC. These are 2 Super Bowl contenders. And when you go up against an elite team that has a great roster and is very well coached, there isn't a margin for error. And in speaking of the Eagles' offensive struggles, let's get to this point here. You want to know why Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo, in addition to Jalen Hurts, because he's a part of the game planning as well, get conservative on offense, and why so far to start this year, you haven't seen a lot of deep shots. You haven't seen a lot of explosive plays in the pass game. Philadelphia really wants to limit turnovers. And to Nick Sirianni's credit, there's reasoning behind that. In the NFL, when you win the turnover battle, you win about 80% of your games. And for Philadelphia, it's even better. Under Nick Sirianni since 2021, the Eagles are 36-2 when they win the turnover margin. They are 8-7 when the turnover margin is even, and they are 12-14 when they lose a turnover margin. Even that mark is pretty good. But that's part of the reason why this Eagles offense at times can be vanilla. They understand that in the trenches, they can wear you down. And they understand that with the makeup of their team, and with the talent of their team and the identity of it, they're like a boa constrictor. And so as long as they can keep the game close, as the game progresses throughout the course of 60 minutes, they will slowly suffocate you. And with the clutch gene of this Eagles team, led by Jalen Hurts, they make the big plays late. But why this is so important is because this is a matchup between 2 elite teams. And you have to win on the fringes and the margins in games like this. And one turnover can really cost you the ball game. And you're getting a Rams team that is coming into the link very motivated, because in their last 11 games, dating back to last year, they are 9-0 against all other teams outside of the Eagles, but 0-2 against Philadelphia. They want to finally take down the Birds. Predict the score for me. Rams, Eagles, stage is set at the link here in week 3. And I think this is going to be a difficult game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be another low-scoring game. But the Eagles have owned Los Angeles. They're at home. They're a better team. This game is also taking place 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific time. And so the Eagles have a little bit of an edge there as well on top of the travel. And so I think the Eagles offense shows some signs of life. They go back and forth, exchanging some blows and punches with Los Angeles like they did with Kansas City. And like the game against the Chiefs, they end up pulling out late and being able to win this game late, 24-21, my final score.